Welcome back. We are here with Blunderpecks and we are at 1301. Let us find some common mistakes happened at the 1300 range. So my opponent's playing d4. We're going to go ahead and play d5, and my opponent's playing the Queen's Gambit declined. So against d4, like, you're going to have to come up with some kind of system and some way that you're going to battle against it. Uh, the most common ways that people play d4 is, the London system with bishop coming out, and of course the Queen's Gambit. Now, if you take, you give up the whole center. So I'm going to recommend that you don't play the Queen's Gambit accepted, but rather go for the Queen's Gambit declined. And after knight to c3, the way that I play, and I learned this from Gotham Chess, this is the one and only chess course that I have bought. It is a6. Now, you might be like, what the heck is a6? Well, the whole point of a6 is to support b5, because if they don't take here, we're going to go ahead and capture their pawn, and we're going to try to play b5, and we're going to have a 3-on-2 potentially. Yeah, so my opponent's attacking the pawn now, because they're used to, when this is taken, attack pawn. But now we go for b5. We might see a4, but on a4, we're able to attack the knight. Instead, my opponent rather goes here, attacking nothing but developing. It's a good move. So there's a few different moves we could go for. We could go here immediately, putting pressure on the center. We could develop. C5 is usually a pretty thematic move, but in this position, I think after c5, they can push. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Maybe let's just develop our knight. So white has the entire center, but we're going to try and put pressure from a distance. And also, we're going to put our faith in this 3-on-2 in the endgame. My opponent just develops. They're not challenging this. A lot of the times people will play like a4, and then you have to push, and the knight gets kicked around, and they take the pawn. But that's not really that big of a deal. Now, in this position, I believe we're going to play bishop to b7, but we have to calculate what happens after this, and I think we just play knight to d5. So let's go ahead and do that. We're attacking the pawn. If we see e5, knight d5, bishop d5, and we should be perfectly fine. Instead, my opponent castles. Interesting move, because this pawn is under attack, and I think we can just go ahead and capture that. After knight takes, bishop takes, we're a little bit slacking in the development area, but we have 2 extra pawns. And so now all we need to do is try to develop and castle. Like, if I get this bishop out and I'm able to castle, we're going to be doing very, very well. My opponent comes here. It looks like they might be trying to push. Maybe that's probably their idea. But I think we can simply just maybe develop here. Or where I could even challenge this bishop. Like, I could go here, and if bishop takes, pawn takes, that looks very, very appealing. So let's actually do that, because we know we need to develop. So if bishop takes, pawn takes, I believe would be the best way. If they go here, I mean, it's not the end of the world. We can even protect it using the pawn, and we have connect 4, we win the game. No, but real talk, I mean, we're going to make our bishop really bad, but we could even trade it off, or we can just slide back. It's outside of the pawn chain, so it's not too bad. But typically, if you have a bishop, you want the bishop to be the other complex. Okay, so let's say that I were to castle here. There's bishop takes, because it discovers an attack. So we need to either go ahead and protect or move the bishop. I think protecting makes a lot of sense here. Although we do know we want to go back at some moment, but then they can maybe push. So let's just play d5. We have connect 4 on the board. So automatically we just win. My opponent should resign. Yeah, okay, so now they're going to start chipping away at this. But the problem is that after, you know, BC, I just take with the pawn and all is well. So I'm not really afraid of that. I'm going to castle because, we need to get our king safe. We don't want it in the center of the board. And the next thing, we just need to develop our knight. And then we're just comfortably better. My opponent's only used 2 minutes and they're down 2 pawns. So they likely should have used more time to think. Now, it's the queen's gambit. It's the queen's gambit. So you are gambiting a pawn. It's okay to be down a pawn in the opening because it's kind of typical. And then you try to fight for it. But I feel like my opponent missed some opportunities there with like a4 to win the pawn back. Instead, now my opponent's taking. Ooh, this is actually very tricky. If I take here, they can take. But I have a little intermezzo. So I can take here. If my opponent decides to take, I can take the knight. And yeah, it attacks the queen. So let's go ahead and capture. My opponent might be thinking that they see a little tactic here. But unfortunately, it doesn't work because I take the knight first. And taking the knight here is probably a good move as well. Yeah, so my opponent's going for bishop takes c4. And if we were to capture here, it discovers an attack. But the issue with this move is that I have the intermezzo bishop takes f3, attacking the queen and taking a piece. So after queen takes, we will take... Oh, my opponent actually might have outcalculated me there. Oh, wow. If I were to take this, since we did not develop, they'll take our rook. But let's calculate further. So if I take queen takes rook, I take the pawn. Yeah, maybe we should just let them have their pawn. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Well played, well played. Let's just develop our knight. We're not going to bother taking. Let's just connect the rooks. We're still up a pawn. And a better position. They have 2 isolated pawns. Now the bishop's looking over here, so they might be trying to checkmate me. You can always play this. If queen here, we always have this to stop the mate. So I think I'm going to go ahead and play queen to a5, just putting pressure on the pawn. Okay, now let's defend mate and attack the queen. So if they want to protect the pawn, they need to play queen to e2. Instead, they decide to go queen to h4. They're giving up the pawn, and it looks like they want to play some kind of like g4. But after takes g4, I can go g6. And then I should be able to just move the knight if they ever go here. And it blunts their bishop. So I'm not really too afraid. Let's take the pawn. Oh, wait. I'm missing some stuff here. Yeah. Yeah, I think this would have been a good move, actually. Because I can't do this. I would lose the knight. So they're trying to come in and checkmate me. I could go here. But I think I can also just offer a queen trade. Or a rook trade. So let's go here. We attack this. So if they take... Okay, yeah, they go there. I think we just give up the pawn. Let's put the knight in the center. If takes, we're fine. If rook here, now we can move the piece. I think we can go queen to d3 here, attacking the rook. Let's play queen to d3. If they were to capture the knight, we take the rook with check. And this also supports some kind of rook c1 ideas. And if they move the rook, we take the bishop. They can take here, but it'll be okay. So they're supporting. This is a logical move. But I think I can go here now. Yeah, I think we can go rook to c1. If they were to take, I take. And if they take the knight, then notice the pin. We can take the rook. And we're simply attacking the rook now. Okay, so they take here, but that allows me to take on e3 due to the pin. And when the queen moves, if it goes here, we just take the bishop with check. And if it goes here, then we have check, check, and mate. So my opponent missed some tactical ideas here. Yeah, so they go there, but now we can simply take, and mate. GG. I played with an 88. My opponent played with a 66. So my opponent is playing the Queen's Gambit, and we go with the Jawinski, and they bring out the bishop. I take, and they take the full center, and this is already inaccurate. If you're going to try to control the center here, you should play e3, protecting this pawn, because the issue is that after this, we can go here, and if they go here, we go here, and after knight back, we have bishop here to attack the pawn. So if you take mine, I take yours. Instead, they just let me have the 3-on-1, and pinning's a little bit better, but we don't go for that. Now we develop, and they gave us another pawn, so we take it. And we just offer more trades. And look at that. We've got connect 4 in the center of the board. We're winning. Castling's inaccurate, though, and my opponent actually outcalculated me here. Because, you know, obviously you can't do this, but I saw that in this position I was going to be able to take, but the problem is the rook hangs. So we had to admit that, you know, my opponent calculated better than us and saw further. And yeah, I mean, it just goes to show at this level, hey, people are starting to pick up on things. So good job by my opponent. Now we activate our queen. And yeah, now my opponent's trying to attack me. But the problem is I have enough defenders. And yeah, in this position, they had to go back to protect the pawn. They can't afford to give up this pawn. Instead, they do. And now we could have simply went queen here, putting pressure on everything, but we go there. This isn't good, but my point was if they take, I just have an outside pass pawn. I should be able to defend any kind of mating ideas. But instead, my opponent goes there, and we have queen to d2, and now we can simply put some pressure. Computer prefers g5, but come on, man. I guess the point is that the queen doesn't have any squares here, so yeah, this is kind of the idea. And then queen to f2. Instead, we go for this, and it's just bad. Notice the pin here. They had to come this way, but then we just take here, so it's kind of hard to play this as a human. You're just giving up all your material. But this way, you're getting mated, so yeah, it is what it is. All right, let's play another one, and we found somebody who is 1260, or well, 1260, sorry. Let's go e4. And my opponent's playing the Sicilian defense. Now, I, in my repertoire, have now been playing bishop to e2, but let's play the normal Grand Prix attack with knight to c3, and we see knight c6. We're going to go ahead and play f4 in this position. And the idea of f4, okay, we have an early e5. I believe we just take that. We could also just develop. Takes, if they go here, there's this because this is protected. Now, it's also just creating a lot of weakness here in the center. So we could take, and it creates this hole for the knight, so we could just try and play on that. If they take with the knights, okay, my opponent decides to come out with the queen, that's no problem. And unfortunately for my opponent, they got tunnel visioned. They see that, you know, they can open up this diagonal, which is very typical, right? Whenever you push the f-pawn, you have to be ultra careful of this check and then taking here. And the reason for that is because in most cases, the knight's not on c3 here, and after, let's say, queen check and here, The point is, oh no, your rook's hanging, right? But in this case, we have the knight there to support it. So that was an unfortunate oversight by my opponent. Let's find Mr. Rail here, playing e4. We're gonna play knight, or we're gonna play c6, and we have d4. We go d5, and we have the advance. Let's push through with c5, and they're just protecting their pawn. Let's develop the knight. The most common move here is knight to f3, in which case we are going to pin. They block the pin. Very reasonable. Let's just play e6, opening up the bishop. Now, when we're prompted, we will go ahead and capture this. And now we're going to take on d4. They take back, and we've created a backwards pawn. So this pawn is one that cannot be supported by other pawns. And now our game plan is going to be revolving around attacking this. So let's play knight to e6, knight to e7, with the idea of knight to f5, putting more pressure. A lot of people will develop here. And I think in that position, we already have queen to b6. We got to be careful, though, because there are potential checks. Yes, so we have bishop to e3. Let's play queen to b6. We have 3 attackers. They have 2 defenders. And we're also attacking this pawn. Also notice that there could be potential tactics here. Using this, we could potentially take, knight takes, pawn takes, and takes to just completely destroy their whole center. I don't think we have enough to justify doing that. They protect the pawn. Now, my first question is, can I just capture this? There is a pin. Or can I capture this way? I think the answer is yes. Because after knight takes, there's a bishop here. But then arises the question. If the bishop moves, then what? Well, if the bishop just moves, if it moves to either, like here, we can just take it. And if it just moves down here, we can take the bishop. So for that reasoning, let's go ahead and capture. And they just develop the knight. I mean, this makes sense, but now we can capture here with check. This is a check on the king. Which is why we were not afraid of the pin. Otherwise, you know, we could potentially get ourselves into some trouble. And on the next move, since we're up a pawn, we're just looking to trade. They take with the pawn, a very interesting move. Let's just capture. They have to take, and then we can take here with the check. We're attacking the knight, and it looks like my opponent's already in a lot of trouble. They're down 2 pawns, and it looks like they're going to be down a queen as well, or looks like they're going to be down a knight as well. Let's capture that. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit scary, but we can be greedy. We can take here. There's no infiltration. There's no check. We're simply just up 3 pawns and a piece. They attack us. However, if I go check and they block, I mean, we have to be careful, right? I mean, not entirely simple. Check. They always have this move, but then I can go check. Maybe I go check. No, I can't go check. Let's not go check there. That'd be a little bit silly. We could go here. Let's just develop our queen. Putting it on a better square, getting out of the attack. Trying to develop the bishop and castle. Okay, they are giving us a... My opponent is taking a pawn. This is pinned, so I cannot capture. However, there was one piece in the position that was being defended by that queen. And now after the queen moves, we can take the rook, and my opponent resigns. We played with a 92, my opponent played with a 75. This is just typical Caro-Kann stuff. And yeah, now after we're prompted, we trade, take, and we just try to apply pressure to d4 because that's the backwards pawn in the position. And after this, we can take, and it's better apparently in this position to take here, take, take, take. Because we kind of have like a transposition. This is exactly what happened, but in this position, the queen can take the knight, and it protects the pawn on e3 afterwards. But my opponent did not see that, and yeah, we go ahead and pick up some piece and some pawns, and then a piece is blundered again. And notice my opponent has 8 minutes on the clock. So we just need to slow down. Slow down, try to see your opponent's threats. Alright, we found a 1350 with the black pieces, so we're going to play our trusty Caro-Kann. And let's see how people at this level do against the Caro-Kann. My opponent's playing knight to c3. Let's go ahead and capture. Simply develop our knight, and if they take, we get the Tartakower variation, which is very fun. They bring out the knight. Let's develop our bishop. And since they've brought out their bishop here, we're going to go ahead and pin. Now, people at this level might go for check, yes, of course, and this can be very, very boring. We're just going to go ahead and trade off the queen and play an endgame. Instead, my opponent castles. Wow, okay. So, since they did that, I think we just swap off the queen. Because if I castle... I mean, I could castle. Castling is a move. Just keeping the tension. But a castles takes, then they're going to go here. Okay, let's castle. Let's just castle. No worries. They can take, I'll take here, and then we can just move the bishop back, maybe. But if they don't take my queen, I might be considering queen to c6, queen to c7, trying to put some pressure on this pawn. Yeah, so they're just developing. Now the queens don't even see each other. And I think we just play queen to c7. No more queen trade, and we're immediately threatening to take this pawn. Yeah, so they push. But in the Tartakower, we like to maintain the pin, and we're okay if they come back and end up giving us this pawn cube. Yeah, so we have bishop back. Let's start with a rook to e8, pinning the bishop to the queen. If we see g4, we simply just go back, and now we see this move. Let's develop our knights. Maybe we'll put the knight on f8. Yeah, so we can simply just go here to protect the pawn, and then capture. We could have also played knight to f8, which was probably a little more accurate, because then we would be threatening to take here. But okay, we got our pawn cube. The infamous pawn cube. Now we've got this nice battery here. I don't see a way to really utilize it at the moment. But I think we can start pushing the pawn and then maybe put the knight on f6 and maybe knight to e4 looks very nice. The great thing about the pawn cube is that they are all like connected. It's very hard to break through the pawn cube. All right, so we got this move. We have a couple of different options. We could play bishop here, try to trade that off. We could also go all the way back here, potentially. Could go here. Maybe just going for this trade is making a lot of sense, because if they take, this pawn could be potentially weak. We're seeing a lot of trades here. And now maybe just improve the knight, put it on this nice outpost. Okay, the queen goes to this diagonal. It's attacking this pawn. So we should probably bring the queen back and protect. We don't want to lose this pawn. That would be very devastating. I am noticing something though. If I were to go here, they do have this move. Okay. They're threatening some dubious stuff here. But we can just go here and the queen protects it. So, yeah, maybe now we're going to get the knight to d5, and then maybe some kind of push, potentially. We can also play b6 if we wish to. Yeah, queen slides up. So what is the idea? I guess it's just protecting this pawn. Let's go ahead and cement the knight in here. This knight is on a beautiful square. It cannot be opposed by any pawns. So at the very least, they'll have to trade off their knight for it. And they don't really have a clear path to be able to do that. And now I'm just thinking like maybe queen a5, trying to play queen to d2, followed by like rook in, is some kind of ideas. Yeah, queen goes back. They're eyeballing this continuously, which makes a lot of sense. But I'm thinking maybe now we can go here. If takes, takes. And if they don't take, takes, takes maybe isn't the best. But I can also go here. Knight's got to go back. And then we can keep pushing the pawns. Let's start pushing our pawn cube. Let's push, push, push. Notice how the pawns just connect and protect each other. So let's keep pushing. Trying to get g6 and some kind of like g4. They're offering a rook trade. I guess let's go ahead and take that. I could go here, but I think simply just keep going with the pawn cube. The knight's trying to go here maybe, but it can't arrive. So I think we simply just try to open up his king. If takes, takes. Yeah, and now they're trying to trade off my nice knight, which is pinned. Kind of overlooked that it was pinned, to be honest with you. So I guess I'll protect it. If they take, I just take with the pawn. Because if I were to take with the queen, then this pawn would fall. Yeah, pawn takes, and it's not the end of the world. Let's go ahead and capture. Maybe not the transformation we were looking for, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and play queen to f7. Just try to play like some kind of f5 at the right moment. Maybe queen here now. Trying to target the pawn. Okay, if they're going to let me trade off some of these pawns, I'm more than happy to. Let's keep pushing the pawn. I guess they have this. Let's just bring the king up. We take. Actually, maybe we trade the queen. Because we have the more active king. So, and it's still protecting this. Instead, they go there. But I think I can go like this. And we're just going to be able to win d4. Also, notice that we have an outside pass pawn. So my opponent just completely overlooked this pawn endgame. King and pawn endgames, king activity is almost key. Whoever gets to the weakest pawn first is going to win, probably. And now we're simply up a pawn. And this is very, very simple. We just bring the king. We can push this pawn if the king ever tries to get close. My opponent obviously did not calculate this at all. Yeah, I think we can just push. I'm never really worried about this. I would just take. So let's just push this pawn. The king's gonna have to go back. And I'll just take here at some moment. Just depending on what he does. It's completely over. I could also just step up with the king, but we gotta be careful because there's a 3-on-2. If this move were to happen, we would have to take like this. But now we can start pushing our pawn. And we'll go here. And the king cannot stop these. So let's take. And now I think I'm going to simply try to go for this square. Because the pawn cannot get through my two pawns. If I go here, here, yeah, so let's go here. If the king were to step into opposition, we can give a check. And if it does that, I mean, I could go here, 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 And then they're forced into a move, so let's go ahead and do that. Take the opposition. And then, yeah, red carpet for our pawn to promote. Bada bing. Bada boom. Now, let's give a check. And we just want to make sure that we don't have any kind of stalemate. Let's push and try to trade off this pawn. The king always has the square. Give a check. Take opposition. Only move here, and then we can bring the king to deliver a checkmate. GG. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. I played with a 90, my opponent played with an 86. And they actually had a really nice position until they blundered. So, yeah, we kept the queens, slide back. And then here I think we should take, or we should probably play this. Oh, you can just take giving this up. King h8, because if they go here, you have this, right? Takes, and queen takes, there would be this. Okay, so that was a huge oversight by myself. But we got the pawn cube, and then we go for this. And keep pushing, trade. And now this is a mistake. Takes, here, king up, takes, push. And queen takes is a mistake. It's actually winning for them. Really. But only if they play b4. Because they're gonna maybe get through. What about this? b5. What about takes? c6, takes, and you can't stop the pawn. So if b4, what is the best move? What if you go this way? b5. Oh, wow. Okay, so huge oversight by me, but my opponent did not see it. This just shows the skill level. I mean, my endgame technique was not up there either, so study your endgames. That's what we're learning here. This is what we're learning a lot. Study your endgames, because even I, as the 2000 rated player, is blundering games away due to the endgame. But, you know, I just saw this position. I'm like, okay, I'm first. I'm gonna win. Nope. They have this, and they can create a pass pawn before my king can actually get to it. So, huge oversight. We found Daniel here playing e4. Let's go ahead and play the Caro-Kann, of course. And we see knight to f3. Let's go ahead and put two pawns in the center, and they push through. So this is going to transpose into something similar to the advance after this. And we always go for an early c5. In the advance, it's just a different move order. They protect, we're going to bring out the knight, and they take. No worries at all. We can actually capture here. And then after knight takes, we attack the queen, but there is this check. So do not fall in for this trap, because knight takes, looks like you're winning the queen, but uh-oh, Spaghetti-O, you actually have to block with the queen, and it's not good. They win a piece. So don't do that. So don't do that. You could take and go hero as well, which seems pretty appealing if you ask me. Here, I don't think there's any trap there. I think check and you can just go back. So let's capture. Now let's take the pawn. This is protected. Check, we can just block. And then we can plan to play some kind of e6. They've got doubled pawns. Maybe like some kind of b4 is going to be very annoying, but this should be okay. Yeah, they go check. Let's just step back. No worries. And we might even plan to put two pawns in the center. Usually I play e6 and just control the light squares like this, but let's yeah, no, we don't want to play, I don't want to play e5 because rook here, our king's stuck in the center. Let's first play um, knight f6. If they pin us, it's no worries. Okay, they're putting pressure on the pawn. We're just gonna play e6. We're threatening this, so I'm expecting b4 here. If b4, maybe a5. Okay, instead they try to pin me, which is fine. We can take the pawn. We're up a pawn now, and they're gonna argue like you're damaging your pawn structure. That's what they're playing for right now. I think they expected me to play e7, but no, we're gonna take the pawn, and we're actually gonna try and go into an endgame if they want to. And this can be, double-edged because we have an open G file here, right? So it's an interesting position to say the least. Let's ask the bishop what's up. They probably just go back, of course. And now we're gonna justify our move by playing rook g8. And maybe just king e7 is gonna be good enough. We could also long castle. There's a lot of pieces on the board, so maybe long castle is a little better than king to e7, but an active king in the endgame is, always good. Okay, they're pushing through. So I could create a pass pawn if I wanted. And then just like solidify it with e5. But the problem I'm seeing is that this bishop's going to be very bad. And if I go here, the knight comes in. I could also play rook to g4. But then they can take, and if I take the bishop, they can take the knight. Also, they can always just trade off first, but I could now castle, actually. And if they take, I take with the rook. I think we just solved the problem. If pawn takes, we take with the rook now. And I'm fine with that. I was probably going to play king to e7 rather, but yeah. Okay, they're attacking the bishop. So the bishop's got to do something. I mean, honestly, I like it on this diagonal. Here, or maybe knight here's a move, but it's just a trade. Let's put the bishop all the way back. They can take now. But first they take the knight. So instead of taking the pawn and ruining my pawns would be horrendous. They actually allow me to take with the pawn and support this. So I think that was a mistake. Because now I'm okay with taking. They're jumping in, they're attacking this pawn, but we can simply just step up with the king. They take. Now, if we take this way, rook here could be annoying, but is it? So, let's see. I could also take with the rook. Pawn takes, rook here, king here. There's immediately this check. I don't love that. If I go here, rook here anyways is gonna happen. I think maybe we force the trade with some kind of rook takes. After rook takes, then I can do this. And I feel better. Or I could even take like with that. Okay, instead they just immediately put some pressure. This is probably the lesser evil because I could trade, but I could also just take the free knight. Yeah, so the reason why this was like a forcing move is because you take the pawn, you're threatening the rook trade, but also you're also attacking the knight. So yeah, let's take the knight. And my opponent resigns. We played with an 86. My opponent played with a 75. Played in a little orthodox or unorthodox way, transposing into the advance when they take on c5. And then we take with the knight, drop back. Instead of knight f6, e6 was a little bit better, but it came. We took the pawn, and then we trade into this. And as you can see, we're just up a pawn, and the computer doesn't hate the doubled pawns. We could have played this a little bit better. We should have kicked the bishop away, taking space, but taking space and also disallowing c4. c4 was a very nice move by my opponent. And apparently this actually is good. If takes, rook takes a4 here. I mean, I saw this and I was like, meh. But computer likes it. So fair enough. Yeah, taking was a mistake. I thought that they should take this, and it kind of forces like really ugly pawns here. Rook ac1. I'd probably have to play king somewheres. But they took, and then we just stepped the king up. And I took here, and we won the knight. So that was just a one move blunder. But other than that, opponent played well. All right, we have the black pieces. And are we going to see e4? We are. So we're going to play the trusty Caro-Kann. And we're seeing the exact same position as last game. The exact same position they pushed through. So let's get the bishop out. They unpin. Let's go ahead and play c5. Now they can't really play this. Let's put pressure on this pawn. Yeah, now we're just like getting like an ultra transposition. Let's play e6. See, if you just play in the same style with the same ideas, then you'll get similar positions. Okay, so what does this move do? It's attacking the pawn. Well, it's attacking my pawn because there's two attackers and only one defender. So we could simply take, we could add a defender attacking this, but I think for the sake of simplicity, let's just take. They never really want to take with anything else other than the pawn because they want to support this pawn. So knight takes here, I would just take the bishop, and then this pawn's weak. So they don't really want to do that. Pawn takes is usually the best way. Okay, so my opponent does take with the knight, and I don't think this is the most accurate because I can first take, and if they take with the knight, we can take this pawn, and, you know, basically whatever they take back with, we're able to take the pawn in the center of the board. So I don't think this was the best decision, and we're already up a pawn. And now I think we can go here, just attacking the bishop and this pawn, putting the knight on a great square, and then we'll finish our development, castle, and we're simply just up a pawn. They give us a check. I'm not really too concerned. We can play queen up. If they take, getting rid of our castling rights, it does not really matter that much because we're in the endgame. Now they're going to take with the pawn. This is an isolated pawn. They're attacking this pawn. So I'm going to first block this. We might have to be a little bit careful of some kind of like G4 ideas, but now let's bring out our bishop. We attack this pawn, which would come with a check, winning the knight, so my opponent's got to be careful. They defend it. Good move by my opponent. And I could put pressure, but once again, we want to be careful. I could start pushing the pawn, but the king's a little bit like, what's the king doing, basically, is what we need to ask. And we should also be looking out for this rook d1 move, asking ourselves, okay, what are my opponent's threats that they have in the position? Rook d1 actually allows this, and I guess I would take, but okay, but anyways, we're looking out for possible tactics. It doesn't work at the moment, but what do we want to do here? I'm almost thinking h5 to maybe rook lift and just attack, but maybe just a simple king to e7 is good. Just protecting our pawn, because I want to be able to move the knight. Okay, so the knight jumps in. If I were to take... I mean, we're up material. We can just take this. I'm okay with trades. If they take with the pawn, we can take the open file. This is a great square for my knight. Once this is gone, because we don't want to go in here, because then we're going to double our pawns after it takes and takes. So first we're going to try and remove the knight from this square, and then we're going to try and utilize this. Instead they go back. It looks like they're trying to defend. I think I can simply still come in, just because if they want to trade, I'm happy. I'm up a pawn. Yeah, so they're just going to let us trade. And now after rook takes rook, we're going to take the open file. Open files in endgames, this is the only open file and we control it. That is an advantage in itself. Let's come in with the knight. This is an outpost. And if here we can simply just give a check, I think we can still just infiltrate and attack everything. So let's go ahead and do that. The knight can always go here, but we can kick it away. And once again, they're offering us trades, okay? We are up a pawn. And in king and pawn endgames, you will be winning 100%. Most of the times. We could take another pawn. We could be greedy. But I want to show why you should not do this. Why you should not trade into these endgames. Because we're simply up a pawn, which means these two are going to cancel out these two, and we just simply have one more pawn over here. Let's bring the king to the center. Okay, it looks like they're going to try and come over here and maybe gobble on these, but I'm just going to be able to walk in. They probably should have played here to stop me from going here. Now the king has to go back. Let's play h5, controlling this. So they're going to start pushing this pawn. That's no worries. We're going to play g5. And what we're trying to do is create a breakthrough. Let's play f5. Okay, they go here. If I were to play this, they can lock it down. But if I play here and they go here, I can take. And after takes, we have a pass pawn. So we're going to play h4. And if they take, we can go here. And then we can just push f4, undermining all of these pawns. And there's simply nothing they can do. Takes. We're spoiled for choices here. We could take this one, we could take this one, but I think we can just go here, here, and then we can probably just play king to g3, and no matter what the king does, we're going to be able to take and play king g2 and promote. So let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, king goes here, we can just play king to g3. Now I'm assuming they're probably going to play this, and we do have to be careful, because, okay, what I was going to say is because sometimes in endgames, if the king can lock the other king in here, it's bad, but we have waiting moves. So we can probably just go here if they try to do any of this funny stuff. You know, for one, there's this, and this is what I'm talking about. So if you can trap the enemy king, like in this case, it's my opponent trapping me. If you can trap the enemy king in the corner with no legal squares, like going here, it forces the opponent to make a move, and you might actually force them into like a bad move here. If you were to play this, then you're in trouble. So if we look at the lines, the only way to win, or the only way to draw here, is to play e5. And the point of e5 is takes and d4, and you just erase down the board. And now the king's going to have to stop your pawn, and you can get out, but now white is making a queen. So you gotta be careful. We played with the 94. My opponent played a great game, 85%, but they just traded into a worse endgame. That was their downfall. Takes. They lose a pawn from the beginning. Now, after this, they should trade first and then take. So they could have did this. I still don't think this is really the best choice for them, but yeah, we get this position, and now we're just up a pawn. And we trade queens because we're up material, and we know with queens off the board, we can trade into an endgame comfortably. So yeah, we trade more pieces, create an isolated pawn, then we stopped their threat because they were threatening f7. Get the bishop out, creating threats, protect the pawn, and we don't have to trade here, but we do. And then we just activate all their pieces, bring the rook, infiltrate, and now we could have took more pawns. Of course, yes. And like we're just gonna eat everything. The king is so inactive, but for simplicity and learning, we went into this endgame. And honestly, I'd rather just trade into a winning king and pawn rather than keeping pieces on the board anyways. So yeah, we get this. We just activate the king, bring the king to the center, and now we start pushing some pawns. Create a passer. Well, I guess we didn't create a passer here, but after king here, we play this, and yeah, I mean, we can start making moves over here if we want, make them move away. If we ever take, we like I said, we just gotta be careful of this. King h2, king f2, and then we probably do something like this. And now white's kind of out of moves, right? Like if they ever push, we can lock it down. They can't move any other pawns, so now they have to move the king, and then we can probably just go here. If they attack the pawn, we're just going to go and eat the other ones. So maybe that wasn't the cleanest, but we got the job done.